All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this presentation on the future of marketing held by Bolt, sponsored by Microsoft. It will be led today by Joshua Hunt of Bolt, and my name is Christina. I'm from Microsoft. And before we begin and get into the presentation, I am going to give you a quick overview on how to use a Teams live event. If you are not familiar with Teams, this is a quick overview of all the controls, how you can submit comments, questions, etc. So you have your control bar here at the bottom. You can pause this live event at any point, and you can resume it. If you want to catch up to the live portion of the event, you will just click on the icon that says live and it will take you to the most recent point in the conversation. You have your volume control and you can turn on closed captions if the captions are generated live. So if you need closed captions, you can turn those on right there. Over here are the Q&A options, so you can submit questions and comments throughout this event. Feel free to put your name in there if you would like. If you don't, you can stay anonymous. But we would love to have any questions or comments you have throughout the event, and each one of our speakers will be answering those at the Q&A portion. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to kick us off.
Sweet. Thank you, Christina. Thank you guys at Microsoft for so much help. I mean, we're able to get all of the panelists on. This is an amazing accomplishment. You guys have no idea. But yeah, let's jump right on into it. My name is Josh Hunt, founder of Bolt. What we are doing today is cultural entrepreneurship. The title of this event is The Future of Marketing. And today we have experts in that space. And what they're going to be doing is sharing with you like tips, things that they've experienced, things that works for them, and what the future looks like in marketing. So I'm gonna steal, Christina's word, and without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and let KG introduce himself. He's our first panelist. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, tell him a little bit about himself, and then we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling with Bianca after that.
Hey guys, my name is KG Graham. First and foremost, thanks for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of Cosign Magazine and Cosign Media Group. Cosign is a media company that focuses on telling stories from entrepreneurs, creatives, athletes, and other individuals and executives that we co-sign. At Cosign, we believe no story should go untold, and everybody has an authentic story. So our job is to tell that story to our audience in a way that resonates so people can follow suit of what you have going on and support your business or brand. And thank you again, ETA Bolt and Microsoft, for having me today.
Yes, sir. All right, Bianca.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. My name's Bianca Reber, and I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Voice. It's a marketing advertising agency, but we also have a separate business, which is a speakers bureau. So people that speak at corporate conferences, seminars, all those fun things. So lots of fun. I'm an excessive talker, so this should be a fun panel today. I'm excited to speak with everybody.
Sweet. Thank you, Bianca. All right, Chanel.
Hey there, my name is Chanel Lee. I'm currently a account director at an agency in Houston called MMI Agency. I was previously marketing for McDonald's. I've been in the field for about 7 years. I think I would probably consider myself more of a creative strategist. I really care about the product that the consumers read, so I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, ETA Bolt and Microsoft, for having me.
You. And last but not least, Mr. Ben.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Ben Smithy. I'm the CEO of the Smithy Group. We are a digital growth agency based in New York City, where I live with my wife, Nicole. We really have everything. We work with mainly small and medium-sized businesses, where we're basically their full agency of record, everything from content creation to paid media and influencer marketing to basically anything that they need from a creative and strategic standpoint. We do a lot in the fine jewelry industry, but work both in and out of the industry and have an incubator accelerator for startups that are direct-to-consumer companies as well. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again to all of the panelists that has joined. This is about to be a fun event. Thank you to all of the attendees that we have. we're going to jump right on into it. Obviously, this is the title. The title of the event is the future of marketing. So I want to start off with a futuristic type of question. And this is for anyone that's on the panel. Just shout out. If you want to answer, just go ahead and shout out. Give us that cue. But the first question is, what marketing trends do you expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years? That's a good one. That's a tough one. So I'll give you a second to think about it. But what marketing trends do you expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years?
I can kind of kick us off on that if you want. So we released a guide, like a marketing guide this year at the beginning of the year, pre-COVID, all of that type of stuff. And the number one thing that we were really talking about, I think, has only been accelerated through everything that we have going on right now. And will accelerate into the next 5-10 years, but it's sort of the rise of the human brand, to where consumers are really expecting brands to be more human than ever. People are always looking at more followers and more likes, but it's really like, how can we be more likable? How can brands be human? If you look at the trends in content creation, if you look at the trends in paid media and advertising, influencer marketing, podcasts, all of these different things, it's all about brand humanity. So I think that's the number one thing. And then I think the other thing is voice. I think we're really just hitting the very, very beginning when it comes to voice and vocal, like voice search. So voice to text has obviously been around, but when we start seeing, I can't even say the device name because it'll start going off right now in my apartment. But when we see the advancement of those in-home devices, especially during times like COVID and all of this, where everything's just been accelerated, I'd say those are the biggest things from a big, like, macro level, the human brand humanity, and from a micro level, I'd say voice is really just on the cutting edge of where it's going.
Benjamin, I'm going to piggyback off of you a little bit there, because I think something interesting that we saw in the last 5 years, especially when we're looking at trends, the last 5 years was really traditional digital heavy focus. We were on TV, we were on radio, billboards were a huge thing. Of course, now with COVID shaking things up, everything's turned a little bit more virtual and digital. But even before COVID, we saw everything transitioning, even in the way that you buy TV, to these Hulu, Netflix, that type of marketing realm. So I think what we're going to see, even after digital, like you mentioned, is a lot less really massive production processes, and are really relying on everyday people to tell the story of brands. Brands are going to invest more in those everyday people, those influencers, to really help them get their message across, because really word of mouth is the best form of marketing. If you really think about all of the brands that exceed and do well, it's because they built this network of people who love to talk about them.
Sweet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no. It's you. Bianca.
So I was going to say, so a common question that I get, so sometimes when we meet with potential clients that are more on the traditional side of marketing, the older generation is what I like to kind of put it as, where they're still really wanting to go with all the traditional aspects, and they say, what is so good with digital marketing? And the number one question I ask them is, do you have a phone? And if they answer yes, then I say, then we can get to a customer. So with that being said, if you think about it, everybody, with how trends and how even businesses are interacting or anything, people want to utilize and get to things quickly through their phone. So that's digital marketing, to sum it all up in one word. And so I think within the next 10 years, as new businesses come to be, or even as businesses have to merge or rebrand or become bigger, they need to figure out how to really reach people through your cell phone, which I'm sure everyone here attending has one right next to them. So.
For sure, and to piggyback off everybody, I'll really say community too. Brands figuring out how to build their own community offline. If you really think about it, people buy into people. So if these brands can figure out how to build their own community, that loyal following will support and buy into what they do. That's why a lot of brands are starting to find or invest or sponsor podcasts that have the same kind of audience. That way they can tap into that community and that audience. So I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years, you'll really see a deeper dive into building communities. With everything going online, they're going to need to have these digital communities to where they can market their products and services.
Boom. Love it. That leads us right into our next question. It's a great segue. So what do you think businesses should do to stay up to date with these new developments?
I'll continue on that. I think they need to remain having their own voice, and what I mean by that is every business essentially is a media company, right? They have to create their own content, they have to tell a story, and they have to engage with their audience, right? So I think a lot of times what they need to do is actually have that, whether it's creating a podcast around the businesses or the products or services they're doing, whether it's video segments, it's just something to have that they can create content all the time to where they're not selling, but to keep people engaged and how to use their product or services better. So I think creating that community and creating those digital aspects is perfect for everybody.
Yeah, as Chanel was saying about traditional and digital and all of that, when you look at trends in OTT and like digital OTT, when you look at streaming, I think there's a couple big things that people, especially if you're not, even if you are in the small and medium business space, but especially if you're in larger enterprises, if you're in marketing for larger corporations, the two things that you really want to look at are CMP for like content management, and then really looking at what's going on in the dynamic creative optimization space. So I think that from a technical and like a really like big level advanced space, that you need to be looking at what's going on in there. So like dynamic creative optimization, that space is really changing, along with sort of like audience measurement, audience management platforms that are really like using AI for targeting and all of those pieces. So I think if you're a marketer in the space, we need to be looking at those areas. And I know Chanel can probably speak to that, working in large corporate brands where they're looking at that. They've been ahead of the game, really looking at those spaces, especially a company like McDonald's, looking at how audience measurement's going to be, how you're targeting audiences for those buys for programmatic, and then especially in like dynamic creative, like the ability to sit there and create 50 different pieces of dynamic creative that's going to be served. Like we can do that in Facebook and Instagram right now, right? But on a mass level, I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think there's multiple different ways that we could have this conversation. I think there's a certain aspect of brands that really want to make sure they have an organic level of engagement and following, because although we put out a lot of messages that we want people to think, and there's some PR aspect of that too, there's a lot of perception that people gain on their own just by trying and using your product or coming to your venue or being a part of whatever it is that you have going on. So I think there's making sure there's that organic voice. I think making sure that you have the right people on your marketing teams. I mean, we're learning this more now than ever, where you need to have a very diverse marketing team across every brand, because there's so many different people that are at different levels of class and economic statuses that are taking part in that, and you have to be able to speak to them in their language. So to your point about the tone and the voice, I think in order for a brand to stay relevant, you either catch the wave or you create the wave. And so it's really just, do you want to be a leader and take those creative chances and kind of lead some of these new innovations, or do you want somebody else to figure it out and then you figure out how your brand fits in that space? So I think it's really just defining which categories those brands fit in, and then the teams that have to execute the work actually know how to make those two things mix.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of that as well, one thing you have to really look at is who your consumer is, and we've been saying that there's one story does not fit your full audience, and so how you're going by with advertising or even trying to reach that potential consumer, there's different story breakdowns, and so being able to evolve and also realizing that your audience may live in not just one platform but on 10 different ones. And if you think about all the different apps, digital locations that we can access, not only are there ways to reach people by paid, but as Chanel was saying, through this organic tactic, I think organic and paid go hand in hand. So find where they live. I always quote unquote call it become that online stalker. Find out where all these different audience personas live and how can you reach those potential consumers, and being able to evolve with that and also adapt to multiple different platforms. That'll definitely be a big game changer in the next coming years. And whoever can do it quicker will succeed at it faster too. So.
Right. Yeah, I think I would like to pose a question to us kind of as a group, because I know at certain points in time, we may feel bombarded by the amount of messages that we're getting, even as advertisers, and understanding why we're seeing what we're seeing is times that I'm just like, oh, I don't want to see this ad. But at the same time, we're the ones that are putting them out there. And so I think there's also some caution to take with how many places and how many times, and kind of analyzing, how many touch points does somebody need to convert, or how many messages should we have running at once? There's so many different ways to look at it. But how do y'all feel about the amount of messages that we see on a day-to-day basis? I think they say it's like upward of 5,000.
Yeah, I think it's really about relevance then, right? It's like, am I getting in contextuality, like context is a big key to relevance. So I think right now brands are just starting to play, especially in the paid space and even in the organic space, relevance is a big deal of like, if I'm pushing content out in the morning, is the consumer still feeling that same piece of content is relevant in the evening? Right. If I'm serving an ad campaign, am I thinking about contextual, changing my ad in the morning versus the evening? That's just a simplified answer to it, or a simplified segmentation. But if we're looking at relevance, I think consumers, and I'm speaking as a consumer, like I don't hate advertising, I hate irrelevant advertising, right? And the value proposition there, relevance is everything. So if we can start as marketers to develop more relevant, contextual, smart interruptions, then it feels less like interruptions and it seems more like inspirations or insight. So I think for me, that's the big thing that I'm trying to think of for our clients is like, how do we make your content more relevant, both organically and on the paid space right now? Because that'll help with what you're talking about from that overload of like just getting hit in the face with everything all the time.
And to bring an example up of what Benjamin just stated, one of my favorite brands is Nike. So anytime I see a Nike ad or Nike commercial, it just seems, it's inspiration, it's motivation. It makes me want to go run or, go buy some products. So that's not an interruption. That's actually motivation. So that just gives you an example as a consumer, how it makes me feel when I see their type of advertisement. So brands can follow suit like that, just in their niche. I think that's the perfect way to market to the consumers.
Sweet, man. I love that. I love that question too, Chanel. And I want to come back to cognitive diversity. Here talking about having different people in the marketing department that understand different cultures and understand different demographics. I definitely want to touch on that. But let's piggyback off kind of the question we just had earlier. And I'm going to go with this. How do you see personal location and environment data to be used in the future? So like, how is like your personal location? I mean, we've all said something. You might get some Nike ads now, KG, just by saying, hey, Nike's my favorite brand. You're gonna probably pop on Instagram and then you're gonna have a sponsored ad by Nike. So like, how do you guys see your personal location and environment data just being used in the future?
Yeah, I think that ties into it all, right? So if I serve you a Nike ad while you're working from home right now, I say, hey, interrupting your work from home environment to bring you, like while all these thoughts are running through your mind, whatever, and they're releasing a new drop in a cross trainer or a running shoe. But that same thing at night, it's saying like, hey, stop binge watching Netflix and check this out. And those contextual environments, understanding what people are doing, where they're at, and just simplifying kind of how I'm delivering that message is a big thing. I think that you're right. Like that, the question itself, that's important. It's like that defines like contextuality between what the consumer, where am I at, what mindset I'm in, how am I going to receive this message? Is it more casual? Is it more formal? Can it be more like jovial? Or, I think that's what, I think that's the key to it all, really.
Yeah, I think what we're probably going to use this very detailed personal information for moving forward is very tailored messaging. I know we've kind of played in this whole AI space where now, you can drive, well, what the plan will be eventually is to drive up to a menu board per se. They kind of, you say your name and they have you saved as a customer, and then they give you this order catered to what you've ordered before. We'll see these different type of artificial intelligence kind of applications coming to life more as we offer more of our personal information for them to tailor messages. But at the same time, I think another way to be cautious of that, for instance, Facebook, because I do real estate development marketing right now, they've eliminated us from being able to target people by zip codes because we are a housing development company. So they don't want to exclude certain zip codes from being targeted to move to a certain place because you get into discrimination. So I think there will be a little bit of elevation in what it's used for, but I think there will also be limitations placed on what it's used for because it could be divisive as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll chime in really quick. So I mean, these things that we have in our pockets, I personally think that we are just literally programming our own AI. Like, I mean, we have all our information on here. We have all of our photos on here, videos. We're pretty much programming our future. And that's where I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna chime in too much, but I think that it's kind of scary what you said, pulling up to a drive-through and they already have your order memorized. That's kind of weird. That's futuristic technology right there.
Right, but it depends if they offer value, right? So if they use my, it's the question of like integrity, right? And so if they deliver Chanel's menu in a way that fits her current desires and are not a way that are trying to get her to indulge in something that she's trying to get rid of or not do, or that she's blocked from her or diet or whatever it may be, that's cool, but it starts to get in that gray area, and marketers, we like to screw everything up, right? So if we start pushing something, you know, and trying to scale something, if we use your data is it for good or evil, you know, and that's being decided right now.
Yeah, it's like it's late night. She's probably just leaving the club. Let's go ahead and push these. Let's push these
milkshakes and fries.
Push these real quick. All right, next question. So what do you guys see as like the next big disruption in the world of marketing and communication? So like, what's the next big disruption? I know we've had some major disruptions in 2020. I don't know if it's going to come this year, but what do you think in like the next few years, maybe a year to 2 years from now? What do you think the next big disruption would be? Just take a wild guess, educated guess.
I think it's around kind of what you started going down in the AI path, right? Content optimization. I really do think that it's interesting. So much time in the heavy lifting of marketing right now and advertising, especially in social and content, is organic content creation, copywriting, all of that. And so what I'm not saying is that copywriting will go away or all of that type of stuff. But what I am saying is that with AI, really targeted, refined, audience matched messaging will start to be generated automatically. And that content optimization will really be matched both visually and from a text standpoint to the audience and to the viewer, and iterated until they hit an algorithm that works really quickly. And I think that's coming faster than we think.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ben, but could you expound on content optimization?
Yeah, so if I'm serving Nikes to everybody on this call, if I'm Nike, well, I'm gonna have 50 different versions of my creative that are all gonna optimize on how it's running based on how we type in as consumers. So the 5 of us as consumers will have different profile types that we get typed into through segmentations. In that algorithm, like whether it's Facebook, or Facebook's doing it now, you can have Facebook dynamically optimize your content, right? Your creative. But what it'll do is that's on a massive scale. It's going to take all these 50 different creative inputs that you put, and it's going to optimize it that Bianca's going to get version 26, KG is going to get version 13, I'm going to get version 5, Chanel's going to get version 42, and it's going to optimize the text around there and personalize it, and it's all going to be done via AI automatically, which is scary in one sense, but otherwise, a lot of us that are, all of us on here, when we're looking at small agencies, independent freelancers, we're sitting here like, oh man, that's the holy grail, you know?
That's crazy. Whew.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think we may see a shift in kind of the creative culture too, and who's actually doing the creative. I think for a long time, brands thought that this consistent look and feel, this consistent sound, everybody's trying to fit in their own little box of guidelines. And I feel like now we're starting to take a few more chances. That freelance creative culture is really coming out, and you're getting random designers working on different things. So I think we're going to see just a really cool creative land that we're headed towards, especially with the newer generation being extremely creative with no kind of schooling to go with it. Like they're just figuring out how to make really cool videos at home, the things that we went to college for. So I really think in the content creation space, we're going to see some really unique work come to fruition.
Yeah, even with content creation, I think subscription-based models are going to really boom through the roof. Like you have, these OnlyFans, everybody wants to subscribe to something. I mean, it's for business too now, it's not only what you think it is. So, subscription models. Even if you look at the cultural aspect, I'm sorry, guys. You look at the cultural aspect with Beyonce doing her new film through Disney Plus. Like everybody's going towards subscription based, and there's apps to where you can just as a small business you can have a subscription based through your own app. So I think that's going to be the next big thing, especially with COVID hitting and everybody's just full of creating content and putting content out. Now they have to figure out a way how to monetize the content they're putting out, and that's one way of doing it. They can package a whole bunch of free content and then sell it all in one piece. So I think subscriptions is really going to take off too.
I like that. I like the subscription base. Could you expound on, so for anyone that's sitting in the audience, and I don't know how much experience you have in subscription based or creating some type of subscription based on the content that you have, would you chime in on how would someone do that? Like if they wanted to create a ton of content, and then in order for because everyone's fighting for the same eyes, and like you said, that subscription base kind of ties someone into that. It's kind of like a commitment. So how would you kind of set that up for your viewers to want to buy into your subscription?
Well, I'll give you a personal example for myself. So a while back, I created a sponsorship guide teaching individuals how to land sponsors, how to put an email together, a template, who to reach out to, looking, how to find that contact on LinkedIn, etc. So for me, what I would do is I would create multiple guides like that, how to get press, marketing tips, Instagram tips, right? So basically you'll get all this information for a monthly subscription, and each month you'll get more new guides, downloadable products, digital products, all for one price each month. And I think the key to that is providing value to other people. You got to think about it. If people are already paying X amount of dollars for Netflix or X amount of dollars for everything else, you have to figure out why were they going to spend $9.99 a month with you? What value are you going to provide to your audience? And for my community, everybody wants to gain knowledge to help get to the next level in their industry, in their field. So if I can put together, let's say, a weekly guide that they're going to get for my monthly subscription, they already know each month they're going to get 4 new lessons of how to learn something new in their field every month. So that's one way, but value is definitely the key. The more value you provide, that's how your community is going to want to invest and spend money with you.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was going to say. If you think about everyone here who has Netflix or Hulu or any of those, I've never once thought about throwing the $10 to $12 that you put towards it, because you automatically know what you're getting, multiple different videos and movies and TV shows. And so with what he was saying, I think value is the key. I explain this to people all the time. You can put up pretty pictures on a website, pretty pictures on your social media channels, but what is getting the audience to engage? And so with those subscription type models, if you're really trying to get that, then what are you giving back to them? What is your photo actually getting them to engage? Then if you're going down the subscription model line, how are you getting them to want to see your content weekly? And so if you look through your phone and see what you are subscribed to, there's a good chance you probably never thought twice about Netflix, because you know the value. So how do you create your brand to be able to just let people see your brand in that way, that it is super valuable to even subscribe?
Yeah, I think the next level of this, though, where we're going to see is, you're right, and you guys were both hitting on, there's so many individual content creators right now, and everybody going out, and it can only get so cheap, right, before it becomes free content again. What I think we're going to see in the next wave is sort of this subscription 2.0 version, to where you're going to start seeing networks of content creators being formed. So the next NBC, ABC, Hulu, Twitch, all of these, you're going to start seeing networks of content creators coming together. And we've seen that in the influencer space. If you look at like Team 10, that was like the Logan and Jake Paul group and all of them before, right? They started these sort of influencer tours of groups. But if you look at content creators, I think the next wave is they're going to start creating networks. So it's $9.99 to get a network of content that has been formed by the 5 of us, all content creators in different ways. We're going to form our network collective, just like Bianca, you would do with like a speakers bureau or something of that nature.
I think Ben's trying to start a business with us.
Let's do it. I'm down.
I really like that. So speaking of influencers, I want to chime in really quick. So do you guys think that influencers will be as effective in the next coming years, like 5 years from now, 3 years from now? Is influencers still going to be a thing in marketing, or businesses still going? And I would say still, but businesses are still trying to get on that wave of getting that, influencer that could, tell their story, tell their brand. Is that still going to be the prominent way to market? Because that's the number one form of marketing right now.
Yeah, I can kick this one off.
Okay.
I think influencers will always have somewhat of an impact in marketing, just because of what I mentioned earlier. You want somebody who can speak to believing in your brand. I think making influencer marketing such a business, though, and changing the tone of what a person would normally say and that type of thing may be the one thing that kind of drives it down, because I think it all came about just from celebrities talking about their favorite brands, and then brands were like, oh my gosh, I want a celebrity to say something about mine. And now it's kind of trickled down to people who are social media celebrities in a sense. And so I think as long as brands allow influencers to have that personal touch, their own voice, the personality, that type of thing, influencer marketing should last for a long time. But if it becomes like a human representing a brand as a bot, then yes, I think it probably won't last long. But if you've noticed, like on social media, they've started having the influencers put ad in front of it or sponsored. Like, you have to say that if you were paid to do this, you have to call out that you were paid to do it. And before, we didn't know who was organic and who was paid. So I think that does kind of separate the attention of the message a little bit.
Interesting point.
Yeah, I think influencer marketing will always be around. It goes back to word of mouth, right? Even if you're not an influencer and somebody is recommending somewhere to eat, and you say, oh, well, I love XYZ restaurant, you're going to go check that out because your friend said it was a good restaurant. So it's the same thing with influencers. There's people that you follow and you love the way they dress, or you love their lifestyle, and they embed it to a way you relate. So it's just another form of word of mouth. It's just that social proof that they're providing, and people will continue to use. I mean, as a marketer, it works for me all the time. Every time I see a friend or somebody I like wearing a nice shirt, I'm like, man, where'd you get that from? And they tell me, I go behind and get in a different color, So I think influencer marketing will always be around for sure.
Yeah, it's like celebrity endorsements. It's been around forever, right? I think the other piece that will propel influencer marketing, and I think it goes on to one of the trends that you were touching on earlier, Josh, is that culturally and in every other way, in all areas of diversity, brands are going to start looking more like the communities and the consumers they serve. And I mean, I think that when we look at what's going on right now in racial injustice movements and all of these things, this is really just the tip of the iceberg of what this really means for brands and what consumers are going to require of brands to be more human and to be more like they are. So if consumers want to see brands that look more like them, then brands need to get consumers to represent them in their own way. And I think it's going to kick and ignite a new wave of what influencer marketing really is. Not necessarily like I have to have 3 million followers on Instagram, but it's like, no, I just have to look like the community that the brand is trying to get involved with and authentically connect with them. And as an influencer, I'm not willing to risk my own credibility in my community for a brand amount of money. So it's going to sort of have like two-way sort of validation and accountability there. And I think that'll be the next wave of sort of that influencer marketing that ties in with cultural diversity.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've all noticed, especially with COVID hitting, is there's a new reality as of this realness. So for example, pre-COVID conference calls, I have a son, I'm not going to be at home, right, taking that call. But now it's the new normal is having him crawling all over my shoulder while I'm talking to a huge group or in a conference, and people like that realness. And I think that what's going to also kind of pivot and change with influencer marketing is not the really set up and staged. I mean, I scroll all the time, and if it's very spoken out, like in the scripted out and everything, I go past it. But when it's actually like the real connection, the real trying to reach that audience, then I am more in tune. And I think with COVID, a lot of people have also adapted to just kind of more being yourself versus having that stage. I mean, think of it, all offices were closed down and we were all coming from home and doing things in our pajamas and having kids go all over you. So I think that people connect better with that. And we've seen that within the last 4 months. And so at least with all the influencer marketing that we do, like in our network, the realness is what is engaging the most, not the scripted and set up, and more so just, I really like this and that's why I'm doing that. And that's where choosing your influencer is very key, to make sure that they actually represent your brand and you're not just getting them because of their following base.
Facts. The authenticity is going to be the most important. All right. Let's go ahead and segue into this. Before I do that, anybody in the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the chat right now. In about, I would say, 7 minutes or so, we're going to go ahead and start asking those questions. I'm going to finish up these last questions right here, and then I'm going to give the floor to the audience. We're going to call out some of the questions. Like Christina said, you don't have to put your name. You can just put the question, and we'll ask that, or you can say who this question is for, and we'll ask that particular panelist. But yeah, so I wanted to ask you guys. This could be for my data gurus and data nerds that are watching or attending. Like, how do you guys leverage your big data?
I think big data is really overused in a lot of ways. Like, unless you're the size, unless you're in the corporate world of seeing like hundreds of thousands of pieces of data hit your site and people hit your site, you don't really have like really big data, right? We can leverage and access big data through Facebook audiences and Instagram targeting and all of those things, but most brands don't really have like large data sets. But I think the biggest thing that, or the leverage that we're using, like large quantities of data to do, I think it's all going to trickle down. Like, I think that we look at like last click attribution and all that models, like all of that's really broken, because all it takes is screenshotting something, saving something, texting something. It's all broken until we get to a point where we break through that wall of connectivity to the phone and omnichannel, which is going to be really tough, like with privacy stuff. But I think more so people are going to really go back to old school metrics of, am I getting, clicks to site, traffic to site, whatever, or when I say site, I mean whatever owned piece of content where I can insert pixel or cookie or whatever data, right? So traffic to site, adds to cart, and ultimately like sales revenue. And I think people are going to come back and that's going to be the be all end all. They're like, I don't care about impressions, I don't care about clicks, I don't care about all that. It's like, okay, can you get me to site, to my content? Can you get the eyeballs of who I want to my content? Will they add something to their cart? If they don't buy, how do I get them back? And then ultimately, like, how much money is this making me? Because eventually, like all the traditional media models, like print and like all these other things are gonna just be so small in comparison that we're not gonna have to prove digital versus all these other things. It's just like, is this making me money? Yes or no? I could be totally misshooting that, but that's just one person's opinion.
No, Ben, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's actually, so very common question is clients want us to build them a dashboard, right? So that they can see kind of what's going on in the digital space, which different metrics and tactics are working. But the number one thing that they want to see on that dashboard is the conversion. So they don't really care about the impressions. Oh, who cares who saw it? They just want to know who actually engaged and actually acted on it. And so I agree with that, because I think that they're more interested in seeing whether it will, like, depending what campaign it is are we getting conversions with this message and with what you're putting out there. And so that's really the only thing that people really request on the dashboard, is they want to see how many conversions are going through, what's that cost per applicant or cost per consumer, whoever's engaging with it as well. So
yeah, I'm with you. I could probably talk to you about dashboards all day. We're currently building one. But I think right now, because we've learned how to gather the data and we really don't have, like you mentioned, that whole path to purchase figured out, we're looking at it so broken. Like, we're looking at, if we sent out an email, how many people clicked on the email and actually read it versus how many people got an email, also got a social ad, also got a display ad, also drove past our billboard, and then they did the action that we wanted them to do, is ultimately make a sale. So I think right now where we are in the world is just kind of analyzing that data, getting it, looking at it so fragmented. But I think once we get to the point where we can develop that whole path to purchase, that'll be an extremely powerful tool.
Yeah, because the only two metrics that really matter are customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, right? And at the end of the day, like if you know those two metrics, the middle happened. You know what happened. We can optimize in there by turning things on and off, but it's like, what does it cost to get a customer and lifetime value?
Right. Yeah. Every client is going to ask, how do we know somebody saw our ad and made the purchase? That's the biggest conversation that you have year over year in these annual meetings. It's how do you know that somebody's going to see a print ad and then buy a house? Or how do you know somebody heard the radio commercial and then came and got a burger? And we just try to make those correlations like, oh, we put up the ads on these dates and then the sales went up on these dates. So we try to draw these comparisons and correlations, and they're not always 100% set in stone as we can say, this is exactly why this person made this sale. But I would love to get to the point where we can do that, because we could really see the effectiveness of what we do all day, every day.
Sweet. So I wanted to chime in really quick. Ben, could you repeat the two, you said customer acquisition cost?
And lifetime value, so customer like CAC and LTV. Yeah.
Metrics that matter.
What's that?
You said those are the only two metrics that matter.
I mean, that's a bit of hyperbole, but yes, like ultimately that's what matters, right? Is how much does it cost for a customer versus how much is that customer worth to my business, right? And that's what's going to tell me, because that ultimately tells us my business going to make it or not, right? Are we solvent or are we not?
Right, exactly. Well, let's get into these questions because we have a lot. I wanted to ask a couple more questions, but let me get to some of these questions really fast. Okay, first question, anonymous. Digital and virtual connections are on trend right now. How do you suggest we bridge the gap of technology for those without access to Wi-Fi, personal computers, and smartphones?
I'll take this one first. I would say I'm definitely a fan of traditional media still, just because there's so many different ways that we interact with it. I think there's also a lot of value in experiential marketing. I know right now times are a little different, but that in-person, that human touch and feel with the person outside of your normal element at events or hosting special things that you have going on, even a call like this virtually at a time where we have to, I think there's still a lot of value in those non-digital touch points that people see, because those are the subliminal messages. That's where you're getting consistent reminders about a brand. That's where you're kind of making decisions that whenever you get where you're going, wherever you're going to Walmart or Target, you may have saw a billboard on your way there that made you pick up a product that you didn't even think about. There's less emphasis on that now because it's less trackable. But I think there's definitely still some value in traditional marketing and experiential.
And to piggyback off of her, I can honestly say Cosign didn't really triple in business until I implemented experiential marketing into our rollouts. Like once we started doing live events and bringing our community together in one location, they wanted to buy products, they wanted to support, they wanted to do more. They networked, they talked amongst each other. You can add other aspects as far as vendor booths and everything else. So like experiential marketing is definitely key. It's a little harder now, but I always say have an offline presence as well as online. You have to be able to touch your consumers and customers as well.
All right, let me get this. It's from Robbins. As data-driven decisions become more granular and digital tactics become more capable of providing data, what do you all see being the future key KPIs of digital marketing, and how will that impact traditional media buys? That's a good one. Whoever wrote that question, you need to come work with me.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what we were touching on like Chanel was talking on the whole omnichannel piece, and really like that's really like fragmented right now. But I'd still say that ultimately like your KPIs are going to come down to customer acquisition cost and lifetime value of that customer. But digitally, I think that traffic to site is going to be the biggest thing, because once you acquire them in your community, in your own content, now I have a chance of doing what I need to do strategically as marketing, right? It's like once I get you in my proximity, now I can see if I can guide you around my site. Now I can see if I can get you to add a product to cart. But if I can't get you to site, to my content, that ad, that all these other things, even though Instagram shopping and all these things are taking off, it's still like, I gotta get you to my content. So like traffic to site or page or profile or whatever site you're trying to go for is going to be your biggest entry point. And then exit is going to be like, how many attempts, so add to carts and conversions am I going to get? I just go back to the basics because I think those are the most tried and true. And that's what, especially small business owners and stuff, that's all they can afford to really look at is like, hey, are people buying my stuff? Are they trying to buy my stuff? And are they looking at my content?
Right.
Yeah, Ben, to your point, I think traffic to site alone also will tell you so many different things about where you could probably find improvements. For instance, if you have somebody coming to your site and you see they bounce off when they get to a certain point, you know you have an issue at that point that majority of people are not resonating with. We've tried a host of different things like contact forms, and we're realizing that more people would like to get to your site and then Google you and figure out how to find your phone number. Nobody wants to fill out a form and have you call them. So I think, you know, we have all these other conversion metrics on our sites or on our landing pages or whatever it may be. But the key one that is getting somebody there, because there's so much noise. If you got them there, then you kind of fought through the clutter of their interests. And then from there, you help guide whatever decisions you want them to make.
Sweet.
So outside of your site, I mean, of course, you want somebody to click through. So that's the first point, is just clicking through to get to the site. And then how they engage on the site would be determined by the brand.
Sweet. Well, let's hop into this next question. This is from B Mills. Shout out B Mills. With COVID and folks spending time at home and embracing new tech, thoughts on the future and augmented reality, virtual reality, and the future of immersive marketing. So I guess what he's saying is, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on virtual reality and the future of immersive marketing?
I think it's the blend, MR, like mixed reality. A buddy of mine is in sort of 3D visioning at Oculus, right? But Facebook, and some of the stuff we went to tour and see that they're doing, a lot of people just haven't really had a modern experience with what VR really is. And if you haven't, you owe it to yourself. My challenge to anyone on this webinar is that if you haven't experienced Oculus or like PlayStation VR or any of the modern VR headsets and what it can do, you're missing out, because you'll be a believer once you actually experience it. And once that stuff hits scale, it's going to be interesting. But I think the winner will actually be the blend between AR and VR, which is they're calling like mixed reality. And that's where what I'm experiencing in the VR world is actually interacting with the in-person world. So you're starting to see these big environments being built that have like tunnels and crawl spaces and like mountain looking things that you're actually in a VR world, but you're interacting with the real world while doing it. And I think that's where we'll net out. Or you look at education, like training on mechanic things. So I'm wearing virtual reality, but I'm interacting with a real car, things like that. I think my guess or my bet, if I was betting, I'd bet on that.
Yeah, I think if we're home long enough, people who would love to rather be outside, the technology gurus will really come up with a way to bring outside inside. So to your point, I think I probably need to get a headset or something, or a VR viewer thing, because I would much rather be seeing something other than my walls inside. So I think that it's definitely coming. It has to be.
Yeah. All right, this is to all of the panelists. What do you guys see up next for music marketing? And how does music marketing just kind of fit into everything that we've already talked about?
I thought KG.
I'll chime in on this real quick.
I thought somebody else.
I'll tell you. I mean, one of the biggest thing that we saw, and it was really huge when COVID first hit. Travis Scott was on Fortnite, and they had so many viewers. I can't think of the amount of viewers, but the fact that people were able to, in their game, go to a live concert as a virtual reality character and watch Travis Scott as a virtual reality character was so trippy to me. And it was just like so much stuff was going on in the world, and then you're just like watching music or artists perform via virtual, basically just being virtual. Everything is going to be virtual. I think concerts for the rest of this year, virtual. There's going to be no more tours. So marketing is going to be all digital. But like KG said, you got to find a way to still get that audience and then that community involved in some way, shape, or form. You still have to figure out a way to touch them. So
Yeah, I was gonna say music is embedded in everything if you really look at it. You can see even what they've done with music with the whole versus streaming battles now. How now they're even implementing products in the battle. Apple took part of it now, so it's like you really have to get really creative when it comes to music. Even if you think about the NBA, how they partner with United Masters, even so, like just on a digital platform for like Instagram or social media, they partner with a publication, a publishing company. So where independent artists now have an opportunity to have their songs played, NBA mixes and be a part of NBA. Even if you think about NBA 2K, a lot of music is embedded in NBA 2K. So in really every aspect, gaming, technology, et cetera, business, music is already embedded in there. So you just have to find a creative way to embed your music, or if you're working with artists, to have them, correlate within that. A lot of things I do is I try to find independent artists for a lot of my content creation, my videos, because you have to be able to license that music like that. You can't use a major artist song because you can't license that, right? So if you partner with, a local artist and, maybe y'all have some type of split or have them sign off on it, now you can embed their music in your content creation and it's mutually beneficial. Their song is getting heard to your audience, maybe a different audience, a different community. And at the same time, you're being able to use music to where you can now license that video so you can monetize it in the long run. So you just have to get really creative and figure out cool partnerships that works for both parties.
Yeah, KG nailed it. I was going to say mashups and partnerships, collaborations.
Yeah.
We saw a trend where, like, when streaming started, it was all these musicians had to go back on the road and do live shows to make money. But I think all of these other branding and mashup and collaboration and sponsorships and partnership opportunities are out there now that I think it's going to go back to where indie music is going to be able to create, be distributed, be found online and streaming, but they can make money and make stack cash going through all these other partnerships and sponsorships and things that you don't necessarily have to be able to make it all the way to be able to sell out tours again. I think it's going to come back to those middle level artists that are going to have a shot again, and it's all through collaboration and partnerships like KG was saying.
Quick question, here we go. When is the best time to put content out? When's the best time to post content? We didn't talk about that. That is a simple question, but it's a great question. When is the best time to just post content throughout the day?
I think this one varies by audience, because when you're looking at data and analytics, you don't know everybody's audiences are different. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different type of tracker apps that you can look and see what time your audience is most engaged, and it'll suggest times to put out content. Some people have a later night crowd and some people have a crowd that consumes their content better in the morning or in the afternoon. Just on a basic standard, you try to follow the hours that most people are working. So of course you want to put out something either early in the morning or later in the afternoon, just because there are certain time points throughout the day that people are working or taking breaks from work or off of work to start consuming that content. So it's really just understanding your audience and how they behave to know what's the best time for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also, one thing too is sometimes people will say, well, I read online that you have to do it from 3 to 5 or 6 to 8. And I always tell people we test it. So there's going to be every audience reacts differently. And also depending on if there's, for example, summertime, it's very different. So it's kind of different with how things engage. Once COVID hit, very different. So you kind of have to transition with that. So kind of test it out, because no one is going to be mad at you if you post one day in the morning and one day at night and they don't know really what you're doing. And so really try to see what that audience that you're reaching, see how they engage. And there's not a manual that's ever going to tell you that. There are different there is different things with technology that can show you it, but the number one way is test it out and see how people engage the best.
Okay, this is a question from Caleb, and that was a great point, Bianca. Regarding AI being the big disruption, I would assume people would find out that they are being tracked. How would you deal with the possible backlash that is already happening right now? It says Ben mentioned it being scary. How would you combat that?
Relevance, right? And also permission and authenticity. Like the answer to all of it's permission-based marketing, right? It's transparency. I think right now the consumer population is so undereducated of what's actually happening behind the scenes. So when they start seeing even just a fractional glimpse of the reality, they're freaked out. And they're just seeing the beginning of what's actually being tracked. Like, we only even have access to partial types of data that is actually being tracked. To your point earlier, Josh, like, what's actually being tracked right now in here is way deeper than we're actually even able to use as marketers. So it's got to come back to transparency and trust. Otherwise, it all kind of crumbles down. But it's transparency, I think, is the only answer.
Sweet. All right, here's a question.
I wanted to hit on this though. I think the greatest element of fear about being tracked is probably not necessarily aimed at marketing. I think it's aimed at more so like government or safety for my home and things like that. So yeah, Ben, to your point, like I think that transparency from a brand that is using some of that information would be would lend itself well for people who are offering that information. But I think that fear aspect of being tracked is coming from a different place.
Ooh, here's a good one, because I wanted to ask about retention earlier. With the pandemic affecting, this is from Adrian, with the pandemic affecting consumer behavior and the way they buy products and services, what are some digital marketing practices you have seen be more utilized during this last few months to continue to capture new customers and retain existing customers?
I can give an example of something that we recently did. Just to mention again, I work for real estate development marketing. And so I think with people not being able to actually go and tour model homes in person, we switched over to virtual tours online and started changing our messaging to be, you know, visit us, take a model tour from the convenience of your home. I think it's all in the messaging at this point in instances like that to understand how you can drive people to still do the same thing in a different way. So that's just one example from me on how we've changed.
I'd say live content. People have gotten a lot. We see brands that are using live content, and it can't just be one and done. It's got to be like we used to see OTT or like TV or digital media. It's all like on a schedule basis. They're trying to do it more frequently so people know when to expect it. But live content is a big thing for us that we've seen increase dramatically, exponentially through pandemic and COVID stuff. People using it and the effectiveness of live content on Instagram, YouTube, you know, Zoom webinars, Microsoft Teams, live events, all of these things. Like that's where I see the biggest change that we've seen an uptick in terms of like growth pre and post COVID.
I would say too, a lot of the campaigns that we run, we saw a huge peak in the last 4 months with any social base. So whether if we were running like anything programmatic or music streaming, social did, and it makes sense because we were all stuck at home. So what became our social network? It was literally Facebook or Instagram. And so we saw a very high engagement. But we also saw with like music streaming on iHeartRadio, iTunes, different ad placements in there, there was a big peak because people were engaging more, listening throughout the day to their music. And so that's kind of all goes back to having to constantly evolve with whatever comes, because one platform may be stronger at one point and then 3 months later you pivot and go to another. So
and trust me, I learned a lot about pivoting. You know, Cosign's a print magazine. We have a digital aspect, but majority of our audience buys our print edition. So what we did was we transitioned. We still print quarterly, but it's more like on demand now. And then now we're offering a free monthly digital assets of our publication, so people can go download our different issues. And what that does is, so every month they'll get it for free, and then when the quarter comes up and our new issue comes out for purchase, people are more likely to support because now they already got 3 issues free of our brand, and they'll get the 4th one.
You hear that? Subscription-based value being added. Anyone on my team today know one of my favorite quotes is, "It's not about the value you are, it's about the value you add," and that's going to be from here on out for the rest of the time that we're here on this earth. It's definitely about the value add. We have a couple more questions, and now I want to ask you guys a quick question. Okay, so what are some of the top consumer segments you all target via digital in the industries that you're in, and then why?
Well, for the jewelry space, we're looking at luxury consumers. So we do a lot of you do a lot of relationship-based targeting, right? Life stage targeting, sometimes geographic and zip code targeting a lot based on those areas. A lot of our small businesses, we're using like geolocation as a big factor because they know where their reach and where they can actually pull customers from. And then I would say, even income-based targeting in terms of how we're speaking to customers, the imagery that we're using, all of that type of stuff. If we're marketing $5,000 pieces of jewelry, that's different than we're marketing, $100 piece of jewelry, those type of things. So for me, it's I don't know if there's anything super proprietary or anything there. I think it's just that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, for me in the real estate industry, there's a very niche audience of people who are even prepared or that we assume are prepared to buy a home. So we're looking at young professionals, we're looking at young families, we're looking at empty nesters, like people who have maybe had larger homes and want to downsize. It really depends on the product that we're promoting at the time. With a brand like McDonald's, the targeting was very different. It was based on just kind of the creative message that you would see. So, we look at different ethnic segments and products that resonate well with that person. So those are just a few different ways that I've done the audience segmenting.
Sweet. All right, so this is what I like to do. Recently, we've been doing this with our panelists. Is we like to ask them what would they like to how would they like to electrify the earth before they leave? It's just basically saying like how would you like to impact the world before you die? So what is that one or two things that you want to accomplish or you want to do to electrify the earth? We can start with you, Chanel, because it looks like it's going down the line. Yeah, we'll just go straight down the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I want to leave the earth? It's hard to think about leaving, but I guess when I think about having to leave, I would like to leave really helping people understand that we're all different for a reason and that our differences make us better. It makes the world a better place. It makes the world more fun. It makes it more engaging. And the more that you can have that patience and that understanding of the different people that we live and work with every day, I think all engagement becomes better, whether that's virtual, whether that's face-to-face, in all the different ways that we touch and engage. And then I think the only other thing is I like to see people overcome. And so I know life is a lot just in general. And so I would just always want to leave the world as a light to help people understand that they can make it through anything.
Great.
That's good.
All right, next up, Bianca, how would you like to electrify the world before you leave?
Let's see. So I always say this, and I'm a huge health nut too, so it goes against all my healthy habits, but I hate going to sleep at night. I absolutely hate it. I mean, it's totally against napping. Not if there's any nappers on here, I don't hate you, but I just don't, because to me, I'm so excited with life, and I feel like there's so much to do and there's not enough time to do it. And so I want to leave, by the time I leave the earth, I want to be tired. And what I mean by that is, like, when you let me refer this to working out. When you truly like burn out a muscle and you like fatigue it, it's just until you can't go no more. And that's how I want to leave. I want to leave with doing everything that I can, trying everything that I can, learning everything that I can, but also helping every single person that I can. And to me, I think the thing that I hate about masks now is you can't see the smiles and you can't see the interaction in people. And there's so many stories that are just waiting to be told. There's so many people that can collaborate and mix in. And I want to be tired of running after those people and just doing everything that I can. And so my advice to people is, if you are excited to go to sleep at night, then start looking for your passion, because like I dread it. And I don't know. So I want to leave the earth tired, if that makes sense.
That's complete sense. Sweet.
That's great.
I would say I want to leave the world with the championship mindset, right? What I mean by that is champions fight for a cause. They never give up. They keep fighting and they win. So in all aspects of life, I just want people just to keep going, whatever that is, right? Like, it's always faith over fear. You know, like, don't be afraid to go what you want to go for. Like, just go for it. One thing I always say every morning is if you want it, go get it. I tell my daughter that all the time in life, no matter what it is, whatever it is, if you want it, go get it. And that what breeds the champions. You know, champions lose, but, you know, they keep fighting, they keep playing, they keep getting out there. So if I can leave a legacy, if you think about Kobe, he had a championship mindset. I may not be on that level, but see how he affected the world and made people with that Mamba mentality, wanted them to continue and to go harder. I want to embed the same thing in the people I touch in this world through, you know, the campaigns I create, through Cosign, through my friends, through the people I touch, and through, you know, through my daughter, the stuff I teach her. So I want everybody to live life as a champion.
What's that?
That's awesome.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, Ben, how would you like to electrify the earth before you leave?
Electrify always makes me think of light, and I think for me, to be the honest answer and the only answer to this is that, like, my business is really, I see my business as my ministry. And so for me, it's like, you know, in Matthew, it says, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. And I think for me, that's it. Like, if we can help people create generational integrity, help people create generational success, for me, that's it. That, like, I see this as my ministry. So I think if I'm gonna electrify and, like, be able to be the light and, like, light up the world, that's the only answer for me.
Amazing. I love those answers. I don't have a closer look, but those answers got me ignited and want me to I have to answer now. So like, the problems that we seek to solve at Bold is just engagement, expression, authenticity, experiences, purpose, relatability. Really just boil down into experiences and engagement. And we bridge the gap between culture and corporate using the 4 E's is evaluations first, education, and experience, and elevation. So obviously this is like an educational segment, and what I would love to do and continue doing is empower others to empower others. So I feel like this was very valuable. You guys were very, very, very valuable to the audience. I'm getting some great feedback right now on my phone, just like, oh my God, I love this. Like, you guys did an amazing job. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I appreciate everyone who attended. Thank you so much, Christina. We finally got this. The people don't even understand how excited me and Christina are inside. Like, you guys have literally no idea that we got everything to run smoothly. So appreciate everyone for joining. This event was recorded, so we will be able to send out this content to everyone here momentarily. Yeah, so without further ado, using that word again, yeah, if anyone else, any panelists have anything else to say, we will end this call or end this event.
Thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah,
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Nice meeting you all.
Yeah. Let's make sure we all connect, network. Some of these questions that weren't answered, I'm gonna answer them or send them to some of the panelists to have them answered too as well. So yeah, thank you guys again for joining, and we will see you guys next time.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.